This is Bob Cunningham. We're at Cecil Pierce's house in West Southport. This is September 5th, 1990. Cecil is going to tell us about the Bateaux and how he came to build the prototype and others for the Arnold expedition to Quebec bicentennial reenactment. This is prior to 1975.
All right. Well, we had been talking up prior to all of this, of course. We'd been talking up in the AEHS, EHS organization. At our meetings, we were looking ahead to reenactment, and this was 2 or 3 years prior to the reenactment. And it got to the stage where we didn't think we could do much of anything until we had a bateau. And George Bell Dyer was on the board of directors and very interested in this. And he asked me to build him, and he was going to pay me for it, a bateau, so that he could practice with it. I'll probably use the word play as I talk about it, but he was going to play with this, he and his friends, out on the Delaware River, I think it is, where he was. Anyway, he wanted a bateau, me to build him a bateau to put in his barn and have it available, so that he would have it available any time that the Spirit moved him and his friends to use it. And I told him that the bateau made of pine and traditionally made, he could not do that because he would have to anticipate the use of it and put it overboard at least 24 hours to swell it up before he could use it. And he didn't want that. He didn't like that. He didn't think that would meet his needs. So I said, if I build it of plywood, which does not shrink or swell, it will meet your needs, but it won't have the shape of a bateau, the real fine shape that the original bateaus had, I'm sure. So I did build him one of plywood, and he used it. And he said he wanted to take it there, he and his friends, and upset it and play with it that way just to see how much it would stand and all that. And I said, Mr. Dyer, you can't overturn that boat. She was so wide and beamy, and he thought I was wrong in that. He later came back and told me, you was right, you cannot upset that bateau. And I think you might not upset any bateau, but I'm not sure of that. And anyway, that was not what we wanted for the reenactment. We wanted a bateau, as we picture a bateau, with the great flare in the ends, the bow and the stern. And so there was nothing written that I could find. I think there never has been anything written about Arnold small bateaux in the sense of their dimensions. And the only thing I ever could find was Thoreau's measurements that he had written in his book when he traveled through Maine. I've forgotten the name of the book. But anyway, he had written in there that he measured this bateau with my homemade rule, as he said. And that's questionable, all right, how accurate that was. But anyway, he gave these dimensions, and these dimensions were big. Now, I had to modify these dimensions because we know from the journals that 4 men carried them. So I must get it small enough that 4 men could carry it. And so by juggling Thoreau's dimensions and an estimate of what 4 men could carry, is my estimated course, I evolved a set of dimensions and built the first of these bateaux, and it certainly looked like a bateau, and it was successful in being one because it carried our men up there, what little they went in bateaux, and that bateau now is up in Canada.
It isn't Megantic.
Yes.
Black Megantic?
At Black Megantic, outdoors, and it's pretty nearly deteriorated, I'm told. The last time I saw it was several years ago, and it was suffering then. And someone has told me lately that it's in terrible shape. It's too bad that had not been preserved, but it hadn't, so that's water over the dam. There is one preserved up in Eustis that was built by others, but pretty much to her dimensions, and that's what we have left, and plus one or two up in the Coburn house, Coburn barn. So my idea of what the bateaux look like, I ought to say something different, something in addition. The bending of wide boards dictates where the flare of your ends, and you could not build a bateau shape and have what we call plumb stem and plumb stern, meaning vertical. The wood has to bend in and come to its whatever it comes to, and you make the stem according to that. I'm not saying anything that anybody can understand, but a boat builder would know what I'm talking about. You cannot bend wood, wide boards in compound curves. So that's how I came up with the dimensions of the bateau. They may have been accurate and they may not have been. But certainly 4 men could carry them, because we tried that in one of our reenactment places that we stopped. I think it was up in Maine somewhere. And I had 4 men put poles under them, carry them on their shoulders, and they could do it. In fact, I was one of the men, so that I knew how heavy the things were. Am I on? Arnold's bateaux were built quickly, and both the later day historians, or a historian, has said that they were built of green pine, and therefore they were weak, and that was the problem, because they were green pine. I don't think that's the case. I think the case is the green pine boat should have been all right if they were built with plenty of fastening. They had no fastening. After all fastening at Revolutionary times was hand forged. There was no machine-made nails until after 1800. And so all the nails were handmade. And there is a documentation that Washington wrote to in an exploratory letter to Major Coburn and said, in effect, would there be nails enough upon the Kennebec to build 200 bateaux? We know not what the answer was, but apparently it was positive, yes, it would be. It didn't turn out that way, because there's documentation that after the bateaux got underway, they ran out of nails. And there was a local merchant who was a Tory, had some nails, would not sell them to him, and those nails were confiscated one night from the man's home or shop, wherever he had them. So what I'm trying to point out is that if nails were scarce, certainly no one was driving more than was needed. Hardly enough nails were driven in because they were scarce. So I think the lack of fastening, lack of iron, was a reason that bateaux were weak if they were weak. And the journalists damned the bateaux as being sloppily built, not knowing they were not necessarily boat builders. They didn't know what they were talking about, except they knew they were coming apart on them. And I think it's because of the lack of nails. Another thing about Arnold's bateaux, which we don't know, and we never will very likely know, how the oars were used, whether there were slots cut in the gunnel, being the top streak of the boat, to use the oars in, or whether they had thole pins, we don't know. Those that I built, I put thole pins in them. Thole pin is the rowing mechanism for dories, but I've always felt that they didn't make 10,000 thole pins. I think they cut a slot, a gouge, in the top streak of the boat and rowed against that, because I have seen old boats pictured as having that type of thing for rowing. But we don't know and never will know just how those were done. But the quick and easy thing to do, and they made them so quickly, makes me believe that they cut gouges in them for the oars to rest in. And that weakened them too, if they did.